I heard my own mother tell my husband, "I know Audrey can make you happy in a way Judith can't. It's just one night, don't ruin our family over this." I was devastated. The next day, while he was out, I changed the locks and filed for divorce. Hello everyone. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I begin my story, I'd love to know which city you're joining us from. Please feel free to share in the comments. Now, let me take you into this story. My name is Judith, and for a long time, I thought I had a life that was built to last. You know, the kind you see in old black and white movies. It was predictable, structured, like the lines of an old blueprint. I had built a home, a family, and a future, piece by piece, never once doubting the foundation beneath my feet. I was the kind of woman who believed that if you worked hard, loved deeply, and remained loyal, life would reward you in kind. But I was wrong. The early years of my marriage to Walter were filled with that kind of simple, unassuming warmth you can't buy. It smelled like sawdust from the bookshelves he was building and tasted like the slightly burnt cookies I'd pull from the oven. We started with nothing but dreams in a small, drafty apartment that barely fit our second-hand furniture. Our first sofa was a lumpy floral thing we found on the curb, but we'd sit on it for hours, talking about the future, about the kids we'd have and the house with a big yard we'd one day own. We scrimped, we saved, and we built that life from the ground up, just like we planned. I remember our 10th anniversary trip so clearly. We didn't have the money for Europe or a fancy cruise, not with 2 young kids and a mortgage. Instead, we packed our old station wagon, the one with the fake wood paneling, and drove up the coast. We stayed in cheap motels that smelled like pine cleaner and the ocean, and we ate sandwiches wrapped in wax paper on windy beaches. It was perfect. One evening, we were sitting on the hood of the car, watching the sun bleed across the sky in shades of orange and purple. The air was getting chilly. Walter wrapped his arm around me, pulling me close. "This is it, Jude," he said, his voice soft against my hair. "You and me against the world. Forever." I leaned my head on his shoulder and I believed him. I believed in that forever with every fiber of my being. It was the bedrock of my world. Our children, Abigail and Daniel, were the greatest symbols of our love. Our living, breathing legacy. Abby, my fiery girl, with a spirit as wild as her curly hair. And Daniel, my quiet, thoughtful boy, who always had his nose in a history book. For 17 years, I believed we were solid, unshakable. A fortress built on a foundation of shared memories and unwavering promises. But fortresses, I've learned, can crumble from the inside out, silently, until one day you tap the wall and it all turns to dust. Looking back, the warning signs were there, small cracks in the foundation I had been too busy, too trusting, to see. Walter grew distant, preoccupied, like a man listening to a conversation in another room. He started working late more often, coming home long after the kids were in bed. His phone, which used to be tossed casually on the counter, was now always face down on the nightstand, guarded. The easy laughter we once shared over dinner was replaced by a tense, heavy silence, punctuated only by the clinking of our forks against the plates. And then there was my stepsister, Audrey. My mother had remarried when I was a teenager, and Audrey, her new husband's daughter, came into my life like a whirlwind of blonde hair and easy charm. She was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the life of every party. I was the responsible one, the steady one. Audrey was exciting. And for the last year or so, she started coming around a lot more. She'd drop by unannounced, a bottle of expensive wine in hand, saying she was in the neighborhood. Walter's face would light up in a way I hadn't seen in years. They'd have inside jokes I wasn't a part of, shared glances that lingered a little too long. Her hand would rest on his arm as she laughed, and it would just stay there. I'd be clearing the dinner plates, and I'd feel like an outsider in my own home. I told myself it was nothing. I was being paranoid. This was family, after all. But the truth was far simpler and far crueler. Walter had already decided our marriage was a cage, and Audrey was holding the key to his escape. The night everything shattered started like any other Friday. I'd spent the day running errands, picking up groceries for Walter's favorite pot roast, looking forward to a quiet family dinner. I walked in the door around 6, the comforting smell of roasted vegetables already filling the air. I called out, "I'm home." The house was eerily silent. No TV blaring from the den, no Daniel coming to greet me with a random fact about the Roman Empire. Upstairs, I heard the shower running. I walked into our bedroom to put my purse down, and something caught my eye. On our bed, laid out with unnerving precision, was an outfit. Not my clothes. It was a crisp, dark button-down shirt and expensive-looking slacks I'd never seen before. On the nightstand, his watch and a pair of cufflinks. It was an outfit for a man going somewhere important, somewhere special. The bathroom door opened, and Walter walked out, a towel wrapped around his waist. He seemed startled to see me. "Oh. You're home early." "I'm on time," I said, a knot forming in my stomach. "Are we going somewhere? Did I forget a date night?" He wouldn't look at me. He busied himself, drying his hair, avoiding my eyes in the mirror. "We're not." "I am." The cold, sinking feeling I'd been ignoring for months finally gripped my stomach and squeezed hard. "What do you mean, you are?" "I have a date tonight," he said, his voice flat, devoid of any emotion. "The kids are staying at friends' houses, and I won't be home until morning." I laughed. It was a weak, nervous sound, a desperate plea for this to be a terrible, unfunny joke. "A date? That's not funny, Walter." "Stop it." He finally turned to me, his expression unreadable, his eyes like a stranger's. "It's not a joke. I need a night for myself." He started getting dressed, pulling on the slacks, buttoning the shirt, moving with a calm deliberation that terrified me. "You see, Jude," he continued, his tone shifting to something condescending, as if he were explaining a simple business transaction, "I just need to feel alive again. To feel desirable. And you can't feel that with me?" The words were a whisper, catching in my throat. He paused his buttoning and looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw nothing there. No love, no remorse, just a chilling emptiness. 17 years is a long time, Judith. Things get predictable. Stale. Last month, I wanted to go out dancing, remember? You said you were too tired. It's always something. You're tired, you have a headache, you have an early morning. I need something more. He paused, then delivered the final, devastating blow. I'm going out with Audrey. The room tilted. My ears were ringing. Audrey. My stepsister. The woman who ate at my table. You're joking, I stammered, the words feeling like shards of glass in my mouth. Please tell me you're joking. She understands me, he said, and I saw a flicker of something almost proud in his eyes. She gets that a man needs to feel like a man. We went salsa dancing last week, when I told you I was at a client dinner. It was fun, Judith. Remember fun? It's not about love, he said, waving a dismissive hand. It's just physical. It's one night. If you love me, you'll let me have this. It won't change anything between us. My jaw tightened. The nerve of him. To twist my love, our history, our family, into a permission slip for his betrayal. If you loved me, I said, my voice shaking with a rage I didn't know I possessed, you wouldn't even ask this. You wouldn't have gone dancing with her behind my back. He sighed, an exaggerated, theatrical sound, as if I were the unreasonable one. I do love you, but I need this. You look at yourself, Judith. You're always so busy with the house, the kids, your little furniture projects. You've let yourself go. You forgot how to be a wife, how to have fun. Audrey, she reminds me what it's like to live, to not be buried under responsibilities. Every word was a knife, twisting deeper and deeper. He wasn't just cheating, he was erasing me, rewriting our entire history to justify his selfish, disgusting actions. He was making me the villain of his story. A bitter, broken laugh escaped my lips. So you're throwing away 17 years of our marriage for an ego trip? With my own stepsister? It's just sex, he said with a shrug, as if he were discussing the weather. No emotions, no attachments. Just one night. You're blowing this way out of proportion. You're being hysterical. After tonight, everything will go back to normal. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing, trying to find some solid ground in this nightmare. And you expect me to be okay with this? To just, what? Sit here and knit while you're out with my stepsister? Wait for you to come home smelling like her perfume? I expect you to be an adult, he said, his voice turning cold. No, I said, a sudden, fierce clarity cutting through the shock. If you walk out that door, we're done. He smirked. A cruel, ugly twist of his lips that I will never forget. You won't divorce me, Judith. You wouldn't dare. You don't have the guts. And if you try, he said, leaning in, his voice a low threat, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll get the best lawyer. The house, primary custody of the kids, the money. I'll take it all. I'll make sure Abigail and Daniel see you as the bitter, rigid woman who destroyed their family over one little thing. I'll tell them how you drove me away. I'll make sure they see that Audrey was just trying to help their dad find a little happiness. I barely recognized the man standing in front of me. This monster, wearing my husband's face. This is what love looks like to you? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Of course, he said with that same horrifying smirk. This is me being honest. I could have just lied. But if you walk away, I'll make your life miserable. It's just one night. Who knows? Maybe she'll teach me a few things that could even help our marriage. My fists clenched at my sides, my nails digging into my palms. Call it off, Walter. Right now. And maybe we can end this with some dignity. Otherwise, there's nothing left to save. He waved dismissively, turning back to the mirror to adjust his collar as if I'd said nothing at all. We can talk about counseling tomorrow. Disgusted, I turned and walked out of the room. I couldn't stand to be near him for another second. I went downstairs and sat silently in the living room, the half-cooked pot roast I'd made for him forgotten in the oven. A few minutes later, the smell of something burning filled the air. I automatically got up, went to the kitchen, and turned off the oven. I pulled out the blackened roast, the vegetables charred beyond recognition. I looked at the ruined meal, a perfect metaphor for my life, and dumped the whole thing in the trash. I sat in the dark living room. The familiar sounds of the house, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the old floorboards, now sounded alien and menacing. A car honked outside. Walter came downstairs, checking himself in the hallway mirror one last time. He actually smiled. She's here. I'll see you in the morning. He leaned in to kiss me goodbye, a force of habit. I turned my head away, the smell of his cologne making me physically sick. He huffed, irritated. Fine. Have it your way. You'll calm down. My voice was ice, a stranger's voice coming from my throat. If you walk out that door, Walter, don't bother coming back. He laughed softly, a condescending little chuckle. Relax. I'll be back, and everything will be fine. Then he stepped outside. I heard him laugh with her, a happy, carefree sound, before the car door shut. I sat there, staring at the closed door, and then I broke. I cried for my marriage, for the woman I used to be, for the man I thought I knew. 17 years, gone. He had made his choice. And in that moment, sitting in the ruins of my life, I made mine. Half an hour later, the tears stopped. A cold, hard clarity took their place. He thought I was weak. He thought I would just sit here and take it. He thought I was the predictable, boring woman he'd just described. He was about to find out just how wrong he was. I got up from the couch, my movements stiff, and started moving. First, I went upstairs and began packing his side of the bedroom. I didn't throw his things. I folded his expensive shirts, the ones I had ironed for years, and placed them neatly into cardboard boxes. I lined up his shoes, his ties, his belts. I was methodical, robotic. I was erasing him from our room, from my life. I hauled everything into the guest room down the hall. I wasn't naive. I knew exactly what was coming. He had threatened to take everything, and I believed him. He would try to get full custody of the kids. He would fight for the house. He had promised to make my life miserable. So I had to be smarter. I had to be faster. After his things were moved, I went to my small home office. I logged into our online banking. Years ago, I'd set up a separate account to buy Walter gifts without ruining the surprise. He knew it existed but had no access to it. It was my little secret fund. Well, tonight it was my lifeline. First, I moved half of our joint savings into that account. It was marital property, and I was entitled to every last cent of my half. Then, I pulled up our shared credit card statements. I paid off the balances from our joint checking account. Then, one by one, I called the credit card companies and reported the cards lost, requesting they be cancelled and that no new cards be issued to the account. I applied for a new credit card in just my name. By Monday, I'd call HR and have my paycheck redirected to my personal account. And first thing in the morning, I would be calling the best, most ruthless divorce lawyer I could find. With every click of the mouse, with every phone call, I felt a piece of my power returning. He had tried to break me, but he was forging me into something new. Something harder. With everything in motion, I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive kind we saved for special occasions. I guess this qualified. I tried to sleep in my bed, but I couldn't. The empty space beside me felt like a chasm. My mind raced. Could I have stopped him? Should I have fought harder? No. This wasn't a sudden storm, it was a slow rut I had refused to see. I gave up on sleep, got dressed, and went downstairs to make a strong pot of coffee and wait. At precisely 9:02 a.m., I heard his key in the lock. Walter walked in, whistling, looking disgustingly pleased with himself. "Good morning, sweetheart. I'm back, just like I promised." I didn't respond. I just sipped my coffee and stared at him. During the long, quiet hours of the night, my anger and grief had cooled into something else entirely, indifference. They say you can't stop loving someone overnight. Maybe they're right. But love can curdle into something else. By morning, I didn't love Walter anymore. I didn't even hate him. He was just a problem to be solved. A stranger in my house. He found me in my office a few minutes later, a stack of financial documents I'd printed out beside me. "There you are," he said, spreading his arms for a hug. "I'm back, so everything can go back to normal." I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "Don't touch me. God knows where you've been." His eyes widened, and I kept going, my voice calm and even. "You need to get tested for STDs. I want a notarized report from a clinic before you come anywhere near me or this house again." He was stunned, but irritation quickly crept in. "I see you're still sulking," he said, his voice dripping with condescension. "Look, I'm going upstairs to nap. I had a long night. Hopefully, you'll calm down, and we can talk like adults later. And you owe me an apology for this ridiculous attitude." He left, and I just waited, counting the seconds. 10, 9, 8. His yell echoed from upstairs. "Judith! What the hell did you do? Where are all my clothes? What's going on?" He stormed back into my office, his face red with fury. My things are all over the guest room. What's your problem? I feigned confusion, taking a slow sip of coffee. All my things are where they belong. My suits. My stuff from the bathroom. You moved it all, he snapped, his composure finally cracking. Ah, I see, I said, leaning back in my chair. You think our bedroom is still yours, too. His face twisted in a mask of rage. My stuff is in my bedroom, I clarified calmly. You moved out. He gasped, speechless for a moment. Yes. I told you I wouldn't tolerate this. I moved out of our bedroom, and soon I'll be moving out of this house completely. His jaw tightened. We'll talk about this later. I'll give you a week to get over your little tantrum. Then I'll put everything back where it belongs. I laughed, a real, genuine laugh that seemed to surprise both of us. Not until I see that test result. He huffed and stormed out. I picked up the phone and made the call. Yes, I said to the receptionist. I'd like to schedule a consultation with your top divorce lawyer. I spent the rest of the day in a flurry of quiet, determined activity. I documented everything. I made lists. I scheduled apartment viewings for the following week. When the kids came home, the tension in the house was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Abby popped her head into my office. Mom, Dad's making dinner. He wants you to come out. Thanks, sweetie, but I have work to do, I said, not looking up from my laptop. Walter, of course, had cooked my favorite meal, grilled salmon, as some pathetic peace offering. He thought he could just cook a nice dinner and I'd forget he'd spent the previous night with my stepsister. He handed me a glass of wine as I finally walked into the dining room. I poured this for you. He leaned in to kiss me. I turned my face away. He hesitated, a flicker of anger in his eyes, but I didn't care. I walked to the sink, poured the expensive wine down the drain, and grabbed a glass of water. The kids noticed. Their eyes darted between us, wide and confused. I wasn't about to put on a show for them. The show was over. I didn't touch my food. I pushed the salmon around my plate, barely interacting. Daniel finally broke the silence. Mom, aren't you going to eat? No, not hungry, I replied. After dinner, I went back to my office. I didn't help with the cleanup. I heard Walter and the kids laughing in the kitchen, a staged, hollow sound. A while later, I grabbed my car keys and went out. I ate a sad, solitary sandwich at a 24-hour diner and just drove around for a while, the streetlights blurring through my unshed tears. When I got home, it was late. I slammed my bedroom door, locked it, and wedged my desk chair under the knob for good measure. He knocked a few times, his voice wheedling. Jude? Come on, open up. Let's talk. I stayed silent, my back against the door, until I heard him give up and walk away. The next morning, Saturday, I was up early. I made a huge breakfast for the kids, omelets and bacon. Walter came in, grabbed a cup, and stared at the empty coffee pot. You couldn't save me a cup? You know how to make coffee, I said without looking at him. He scoffed. He glanced at the stove where I was plating the last omelet for Daniel. So, you made scrambled eggs. They're for the kids, I said, handing Daniel his plate. He glared at me, then opened the fridge and slammed it shut. After breakfast, I walked out of the kitchen without another word. By noon, I was on the couch, trying to lose myself in a college football game. Walter came in with a plate of food and a soda, placing them carefully on the coffee table in front of me. I brought you lunch, so you don't miss the game, he said with a sickeningly sweet smile. I looked from the plate to his face, and something inside me just snapped. Without a word, I kicked the coffee table. The plate and soda went flying, crashing to the floor in a mess of broken ceramic and fizzing liquid. He gasped, stumbling back. Judith. I got up, walked to the fridge, and grabbed a bottle of water. I wasn't eating or drinking anything he touched. And no, I didn't clean it up. He brought it in so he could clean it up. I wasn't his maid anymore. We need to talk, he said after a long, tense pause. Shut up. Game's on, I muttered, my eyes glued to the screen. For God's sake, Judith. The kids have noticed something is wrong, he hissed. Good, I said, still not looking at him. They'll notice when I'm gone, too. He crossed his arms, his face a mask of arrogant certainty. You're not moving out. There's not going to be a divorce. This is just a phase. I just ignored him and turned up the volume. Later that afternoon, Abby and Daniel came and sat on the armchairs across from me, looking like a miniature jury. Abby was the first to speak, her voice trembling slightly. Mom, what's going on with you and Dad? I took a deep breath and hit the mute button on the remote. This was it. Your father and I are getting a divorce, I said, keeping my voice as steady as I could. I need you to know this isn't about you. We both love you more than anything, but this is between us. Daniel frowned, his brow furrowed with a seriousness beyond his years. Why? Because your father did something I can't forgive, I said, looking from his face to Abby's. He knew exactly how I felt about it, and he did it anyway. And he isn't sorry. Abby's expression tightened. You mean his date Friday night? I stared at her, stunned. You knew? Yeah, she admitted, looking down at her hands. Dad told us you weren't happy about it. He said you were being difficult. My stomach twisted into a cold, hard knot. So you know he cheated on me? That the date was with your Aunt Audrey? Daniel shook his head vehemently. No, he didn't cheat, he insisted, his voice rising. He told you first. He said it was just for one night to help him feel better because he was sad. Yes, Mom, Abby added, her voice pleading. He said if you really loved him, you'd move on. He promised it won't happen again. He said Aunt Audrey was just being a good friend and helping him through a tough time. I stared at them, speechless. The poison had worked faster than I could have imagined. They were siding with him. They had swallowed the lies whole. Really? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. If he loved me, why would he need to sleep with someone else to feel better? Abby sighed, a world-weary sigh that belonged on someone much older. Come on, Mom. It was just once. You're ruining our family over this. Let's talk about promises, I said, leaning forward, my voice low and intense. 17 years ago, in front of all our friends and family, he promised to be mine and mine only. No exceptions. That is a sacred vow. If he can break that vow so easily, why should I or anyone else ever trust his word again? Daniel met my gaze, his jaw tight with adolescent righteousness. But you promised to stay through good and bad, he countered, throwing my own words back at me. True, I acknowledged. But his vow came first. When you broke his, he shattered the entire contract. That releases me from mine. Abby exhaled sharply, frustrated. We just don't get why you have to end the whole marriage over one night. Dad's really sorry. I shook my head, feeling the crushing weight of their judgment. Why am I being blamed for this? Why am I the bad guy here? He had made his choice, and I was making mine. But they didn't want to hear it. Walter and Audrey had already painted their masterpiece of manipulation, and I was the villain. To them, he did what he needed to do, and I was the one overreacting, the one destroying everything. One night out of 17 years. What was one night out of 6,205? To them, it was a rounding error. To me, it was everything. When they realized I wasn't changing my mind, they got up and left the room, leaving me alone with the muted game and the ruins of my family. The final, soul-crushing blow came on Wednesday. I came home from a meeting with my new lawyer, feeling bruised but determined, only to find my living room full. My parents were there. And my mother and stepfather, Charles, Audrey's father. I braced myself. I knew what was coming. "Judith," Charles said, his voice laced with disappointment. "Your mother and I are very upset by all this. We know what Walter did was wrong, but we think you're overreacting." I crossed my arms, saying nothing. "Yes, he slept with Audrey," he continued, having the decency to look uncomfortable. "And yes, it was disrespectful. But it was one mistake in 20 years. You have 2 wonderful children. Don't throw their whole world away over this." I kept my voice even and cold. It wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated decision. He and your daughter planned it. He blindsided me with it just minutes before he left. It was deliberate. Then, my own mother spoke, her voice soft and full of sorrow, but not for me. "He didn't cheat, Judith," she said, and her words broke the last intact piece of my heart. I blinked, sure I had misheard. "Excuse me?" "He was honest about it," she insisted, her eyes pleading with me to understand. "That's not the same as cheating. Walter called me, you know. He's heartbroken that you're reacting this way." She reached out and patted my arm. "Judith, honey, you've always been so rigid. So serious. Audrey has such a vibrant spirit, she just knows how to make people happy. Maybe Walter just needed a little of that joy. You shouldn't be so selfish as to deny him that." I pulled my arm away as if her hand were on fire. She was defending her golden stepdaughter, the life of the party, over me. Her own flesh and blood. My own dad, usually my quiet ally, tried to reason with me. "We understand you're upset, Judith. But think about the bigger picture. Walter loves you. He promised it won't happen again. With some counseling, you two can get past this. Don't let your pride cost you your family." Pride. They thought this was about pride. I stood there, stunned into silence, looking at the faces of the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, and I saw only judgment. They had all chosen a side, and it wasn't mine. I couldn't take it. Without another word, I turned, walked to my room, and slammed the door. 10 minutes later, I grabbed my car keys, walked past all of them without a glance, and left. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I had to get away. The divorce was a nightmare, just as Walter had promised. He fought me at every turn, dragging things out with his expensive lawyer. The judge ordered us into counseling. I went to all 12 sessions and sat in stony silence, staring at the wall, until the counselor finally wrote in her report that reconciliation was impossible. He fought over every single item in the house. A worn-out armchair he'd always hated, suddenly he claimed it had sentimental value. It was all petty, cruel nonsense designed to wear me down and bleed me dry financially. In the end, he won. The judge, an older man who seemed to sympathize with Walter's version of the neglected husband, delivered the verdict. He got the house, with me being forced to pay half the mortgage until Daniel graduated high school, under the logic that I was abandoning the family home. He was awarded primary custody of the kids, who had both told the court they wanted to live with their father. And the final insult, spousal maintenance. $1,000 a month for 5 years, unless he remarried. Of course, Audrey moved in before the ink on the divorce decree was even dry. Half my salary went straight to funding the new life of the man who betrayed me and the woman who helped him. I had to cash out my share of our investments just to afford the down payment on a small, run-down fixer-upper in a less desirable part of town. It wasn't much, with its peeling paint and creaky floors, but it was mine. It was my sanctuary. I spent my nights and weekends working on that house, pouring all my grief and rage into sanding floors, patching drywall, and painting walls. My hands were often raw and blistered, but it was better than sitting still and letting the bitterness consume me. Visitation with my kids was a joke. Walter made sure every scheduled weekend was a struggle. Oh, Abby has a dance competition this weekend, she can't come. Daniel has a big project due, he needs to stay home and study. When I did get to see them, they were cold, distant, their conversations stilted and filled with an underlying hostility. They looked at me with their father's eyes, seeing a woman who was selfish and bitter. No matter how many times I tried to gently explain my side, their minds were made up. One Sunday evening, after a particularly painful visit where Daniel had barely said 2 words to me, Abby told me flat out they didn't want to come over anymore. "It's just awkward, Mom," she said, refusing to meet my eyes. I could have gone back to court and forced it, but what would be the point? Dragging 2 resentful teenagers to my house against their will would only make things worse. So I let them go. I still sent gifts and cards on birthdays and holidays, carefully chosen things I knew they'd love. They always came back in the mail, marked "Return to Sender." The only thing that never came back? The child support checks. They cashed those without a word. The years passed in a blur of work and solitude. I buried myself in my furniture restoration projects. It started as a hobby, a way to fill the empty hours and the empty rooms in my house. I'd find old, discarded pieces at flea markets, dressers with broken drawers, chairs with wobbly legs, and I'd bring them back to my workshop. I learned to love the methodical process, the stripping away of old, ugly varnish, the sanding down to the bare wood, the careful application of a new stain, bringing out the hidden beauty of the grain. I was taking things that were broken and making them whole again. It was the only thing that made sense. Then, 5 years to the day after the divorce was finalized, I got a gaudy, gold-embossed wedding announcement in the mail. Walter was marrying Audrey. The wedding was scheduled for the weekend immediately following my very last alimony payment. The timing was, of course, impeccable. That same month, Daniel turned 18, and the child support and mortgage payments finally ended. After 5 long years, I was financially free. I celebrated by opening a cheap bottle of champagne, drinking it straight from the bottle, and toasting to my newfound independence in my empty house. Now that the financial chains were broken, I decided to sever the last remaining tie. My name was still on the deed to that house, the one I was still helping to pay for. The divorce agreement was clear, he could stay until the kids graduated high school. After that, the house was to be sold and the equity divided. He and Audrey seemed to have conveniently forgotten that part. I called my lawyer. The housing market had boomed. The equity in the house was now substantial. My lawyer sent them a certified letter. Their response was a furious phone call from Walter. He screamed, he threatened, he called me every name in the book. I just listened calmly, then said, "Talk to my lawyer, Walter," and hung up. The legal battle was short and satisfying. The judge took one look at the divorce decree and ruled in my favor. They were forced to buy me out. I walked away with a check for over $250,000. The best part? I knew they had to borrow the money from Audrey's father to pay me. With that cash, I paid off my own mortgage, renovated my kitchen, and built a proper, heated workshop in my backyard. My little hobby was about to become a real business. One sunny afternoon, I was at a local antique fair, my first time as a seller. I had a booth filled with my restored pieces. A man stopped by, running his hand admiringly over a walnut dining table I had spent months on. He had kind, crinkling eyes and a gentle smile. "You did this yourself?" he asked, his voice warm. "The joinery is perfect." "I did," I said, a little surprised. "Most people don't notice the details." "I'm a carpenter," he said, extending a hand that was calloused and strong. "Mitchell. But my friends call me Mitch." We spent the rest of the afternoon talking about wood grain, varnish, and the satisfaction of making something beautiful with your own hands. He told me he was a widower, raising his 10-year-old son, Leo, on his own. For the first time in so many years, I felt a spark of something other than anger or grief. I felt hope. Mitch and I started dating. It was slow, careful. We were two broken people cautiously learning to trust again. His son, Leo, was a bright, funny kid with Mitch's kind eyes. He took to me immediately. He didn't have a mom, and I didn't have my kids. We sort of adopted each other. Mitch's house was a place of comfortable chaos, full of half-finished projects and boyish energy. Mine was meticulously organized and quiet. We balanced each other out. One rainy Saturday, I was teaching Leo how to properly sand a chair leg in my workshop. He was concentrating so hard, his tongue sticking out the side of his mouth. He looked up at me and said, "My friends at school have moms who bake cookies. You make furniture. I think that's way cooler." My heart swelled so much I thought it might burst. A few months later, Mitch and I got married in a simple ceremony in our backyard, surrounded by a small group of close friends. Leo was his best man. Life was good. I had a husband who respected and adored me, a son who had chosen me, and a business that was thriving. I had built a new life, a new foundation, one that was solid and true. Then, one evening, nearly 10 years after my world had fallen apart, my phone rang. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer. But something made me press the green button. "Hello?" "Hi, Mom," a hesitant, excited voice said on the other end. My breath caught in my chest. It was Abigail. "Abby?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I have great news," she said, the words tumbling out in a rush. "I'm getting married. His name is Bobby and he's wonderful and I'm so happy." My chest tightened with a confusing mix of joy and old pain, but I forced a smile into my voice. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you. I want you at the wedding, of course," she said. Relief washed over me. A chance. A new beginning. "Of course," I said warmly. "It would be my honor to be there." There was a pause on the other end of the line, just long enough for the familiar knot of dread to form in my stomach. Then she said, "So, yeah. Dad is going to walk me down the aisle. He and Aunt Audrey are paying for the whole thing, you see. And since it would be, awkward for everyone if you were up front, we were thinking you could sit a few rows back. On Bobby's side. But I still really want you there." The line went silent. I couldn't breathe. He was walking her down the aisle. He was getting the honor. After everything. And I was being relegated to the back, an inconvenient footnote in my own daughter's life, all to preserve the comfort of the people who had destroyed me. "Mom?" she asked, her voice tinged with impatience. "Are you there?" "He's not your father," I finally said, my voice cold and hard. "Your father, Walter, is the man I divorced." "Well, yeah," she said, an audible huff of frustration in her voice. "He's been there for me, Mom. He and Aunt Audrey helped me pick out my dress. They've been amazing. Honestly, if you hadn't left all those years ago, none of this would even be an issue." I clenched my jaw so hard I thought my teeth would crack. After all these years, she still believed the lie. She still thought I was the one who had left. "Then I won't be there, Abby. You handed my last great honor as a mother to the man who broke our family and the woman who helped him. I wish you happiness, but I will not sit in the back of a church and watch that spectacle." Her voice turned to ice. "Fine. I knew you'd be like this. You're always so dramatic. Don't expect to see your grandkids, then. Dad was right all along. You're just a selfish, bitter woman." Click. She hung up. I put the phone down on the counter, my hand trembling. I walked out to my workshop, grabbed a rough grit sanding block, and got back to work on a heavy cherry wood table, the repetitive motion the only thing keeping me from screaming. I was so focused, so lost in the rhythm of the work, I didn't notice Leo, now a lanky, sharp-witted teenager, come in and quietly pick my phone up from the counter. I hadn't even realized he was home. I found out later what he did. He went to his room, found Abby's number in my recent calls, and dialed it. Abby, probably expecting a call from a caterer or a florist, answered. Hello? A sharp, unfamiliar voice came through the line. Is this Abigail? Yes, she said cautiously. Who's this? You can stop calling my mom and being a cast iron witch to her, Leo snapped, wasting no time on pleasantries. Abby was stunned. Excuse me? Who the hell are you? I'm Leo, he said, his tone icy. My dad married the amazing woman you used to call Mom, and she adopted me. I love her, and I would never, ever treat her the way you just did. You're an insult to daughters everywhere. What are you talking about? She stammered. Leo let out a bitter laugh. Oh, I know exactly what happened. Your dad cheated on my mom with your aunt, and you and your brother defended him. That says everything I need to know about your character. Abby opened her mouth to argue, but Leo steamrolled on. My real mom passed away when I was little. But my dad is a good man, and he would never have done that to her. And let me tell you something, if Judith ever, for 1 second, treated my dad the way your father treated her, I would help him pack her bags myself. He paused, letting the words sink in. Your father isn't a real man. But my dad, Mitch? He's the best man I know. In fact, you should probably thank your homewrecker of an aunt for being so stupid and selfish. Because if she hadn't helped destroy your family, my mom wouldn't be in my life now. So, thanks for that. Abby was speechless. Leo's voice turned even colder. You told my mom you wanted everyone to be comfortable at your wedding. But your everyone doesn't include her, does it? It only includes the comfort of the people who betrayed her. And by the way, when you say your vows tomorrow, look into your husband's eyes and imagine what happens when he cheats on you. Because based on the example you grew up with, he will. And when that day comes, call me. I'd love to laugh in your face. He hung up. Abby told me later that she just stood there, phone in hand, completely shocked. She had no idea I had remarried, let alone that she had a new stepbrother. But something about what that angry, loyal boy said, it stuck with her. It was a crack in the foundation of lies she had lived with for a decade. The next day, her wedding day, was a blur. But Leo's words echoed in her head. Imagine what happens when he cheats on you. As she was getting her makeup done, she felt a pang of sadness that I wasn't there. But she pushed it down. She had reached out. I had rejected her. She had chosen her side. Walter smiled as he took her arm to walk her down the aisle. Ready, baby girl? Walking down that long aisle, her heart swelled. She was surrounded by family. Daniel stood proudly as one of Bobby's groomsmen. Everyone was there for her. At the altar, Walter lifted her veil, kissed her cheek, and whispered, "Congratulations." Then the priest spoke. Who gives this bride away? Walter's voice boomed through the church. Her Aunt Audrey and I do. Something felt wrong. Deeply wrong. But she pushed the thought aside. The ceremony continued. She turned to face her fiancé, Bobby. She looked into his kind, honest eyes and began to recite her vows. To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better, for worse, for richer, for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish, till death do us part, forsaking all others. She froze on that last phrase. Forsaking all others. As she looked into Bobby's eyes, her vision blurred. Suddenly, she saw him with another woman, laughing. Then, just as quickly, the image shifted. She saw herself, years from now, standing before me, her mother, telling me she had slept with someone else and expecting me to understand. A murmur swept through the guests. Bobby's brow furrowed in concern. Abby? Honey? A weight she hadn't even realized she was carrying, a decade of buried truth, suddenly lifted. A small, watery smile touched her lips. I finally get it, she whispered. Bobby blinked, completely confused. Ah, that's great, sweetheart, but what do you get? Everything, she said. She took a deep, steadying breath and looked him right in the eyes. Bobby, do you love me? His frown deepened. Of course I do. Abby, what's wrong? You're scaring me. She exhaled slowly, a long, cleansing breath. Because I can't marry you today. A collective gasp rippled through the crowded church. Bobby's face went pale. You're not leaving me at the altar, are you? She squeezed his hands tightly. No way. We are getting married. I promise you. Just not today. Shocked whispers filled the church, but for the first time in her life, she didn't care what anyone else thought. This is wrong, she said, her voice gaining strength, speaking to him but also to herself. And I need to make it right. I'm only getting married once, Bobby, for life. So I need to fix things first. She turned to the stunned guests, her voice clear and steady. I am so sorry, everyone, but I can't do this today. We're not canceling, just postponing. We'll let you know the new date as soon as we can. But hey, she added, a sudden, mischievous glint in her eye, the reception hall is paid for, the bar is open, and the band is already set up. So please, go, eat, drink, and enjoy the party. A few confused chuckles emerged from the crowd. She shifted her gaze to land directly on Walter and Audrey, who were staring at her in horror. She smirked. And don't worry. You're still paying the bill. A wave of genuine laughter spread through the guests. Without another word, she grabbed Bobby's hand and turned to walk back down the aisle. Before they could leave, Walter and Audrey rushed to intercept them, their faces masks of fury. What in the world are you doing? Audrey demanded, her voice a harsh whisper. Abby met her glare, unwavering. Fixing a mistake. What mistake? Walter growled. Her jaw tightened. The biggest one I ever made. She looked from one of their guilty faces to the other. The mistake of believing your nonsense. The mistake of blaming my mother instead of helping her kick your cheating asses to the curb where you belong. Audrey's lips parted in shock. Abigail. I'm your aunt. Abby scoffed. Yeah, well, you're also a homewrecker. And once a cheater, always a cheater. How dare you? Walter sputtered. Abby let out a sharp, bitter laugh. How dare I? I regret every second I took your side. It wasn't until I looked into Bobby's eyes and said those words, forsaking all others, that I finally saw you for what you are. A pair of liars and cheats. And you know what? A realization hit me like a freight train. If Bobby ever betrayed me, it would destroy me. And if I ever did that to him, I'd be no better than you. All this time, she had been blind. I, her mother, had been the real example of strength and honor. They had been the mistake. Walter's expression twisted with anger. What are you talking about? But she saw it. The flicker of fear in his eyes. She tilted her head, her voice dropping to a lethal whisper. Come on, Dad. Do you really think I don't know about your training sessions with your personal trainer? The one whose apartment you always go to, not the gym? Walter stiffened. Audrey's eyes darted between them. Abby smirked. Funny how all your workouts happen when her husband is out of town. Or how about the landscaping crew, Aunt Audrey? Do they get special tips after they finish the yard work? I've got video proof from the security cameras. I came home early a few times, just in case you ever felt like denying it. A horrified gasp rippled through the guests who were close enough to hear. Abby turned to Walter. Before God and everyone here, I vow to pay you back every dime you spent on this wedding with the same sincerity you had when you made your vows to my mother. Yeah, you shouldn't hold your breath. With Walter and Audrey stunned into a humiliated silence, Abby grabbed Bobby's hand and led him down the aisle. On the way out, she stopped by the videographer. Did you get all that? He grinned, his eyes wide. Oh yeah. Every second. He handed her the memory card. I've got backups. She quickly signed a release form for him to post the clip online. She wanted the world to see them for who they really were. If you're still listening, please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below. That way, I'll know you're this awesome, and I'll know you've been with me on this whole journey. Your support is a huge encouragement for me. Please, comment the number 1 so I can see you, and now, let me tell you the rest of my story. Bobby and Abby rushed to the parking lot. His car was already packed for their honeymoon, but their destination had changed. Where to? Bobby asked as he peeled out of the church parking lot, leaving a cloud of shocked relatives behind. Just drive, Abby said, pulling up her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. I'll put in the address. Finding me wasn't hard. I hadn't moved. She knew the town. A quick online search gave her the address. 2 hours away. She told me later that they didn't stop, not even to change out of their wedding clothes. She had something to make right, and it couldn't wait. Opening my front door that evening to find a woman in a full white wedding gown and a man in a tuxedo on my porch was one of the most surreal moments of my life. For a split second, I was just confused. Then my eyes focused, and I recognized her. My daughter, Abigail. The one who had told me I was a bitter, selfish woman just a few days before. I knew today was her wedding day. So why was she here, looking like a runaway bride? Her voice trembled. Mom? Can we talk? I was still stunned, but I stepped aside, gesturing numbly toward the living room where Mitch and Leo were watching a movie, their jaws practically on the floor. Abby, I said cautiously. This is my husband, Mitch, and our son, Leo. My voice was hoarse. I turned to the handsome, bewildered young man beside her. And you are? Oh, right, Abby interjected, her cheeks flushing. Mom, this is my fiancé, Bobby Jensen. Fiancé? The word hung in the air. I thought you just got married, I said, my brow furrowed. She hesitated, her eyes filling with tears. I couldn't go through with it. Not like that. Not without you. The tears started to fall, smearing her perfect makeup. Mom, I finally understand. You were right. All those years, you were right. I was so blind, so caught up in Dad's lies. I blamed you when he was the one who walked away. I was young and stupid, but I see it all so clearly now. And I need you in my life. I'm so sorry. I need you to walk me down the aisle. I stood frozen, my mind reeling, trying to process a decade of pain and confusion being unraveled on my doorstep. One question kept nagging at me. Abby, what on earth happened at the wedding? She glanced at Bobby, then pulled a small memory card from her clutch. It's better if I just show you. While Bobby went to the car to grab their suitcases and Mitch, ever the gracious host, showed a still sniffling Abby where she could change out of her dress, I put the card into my laptop. When they all returned to the living room, I hit play. At first, it was a normal wedding video. Then, as Abby recited her vows, she stopped. The camera zoomed in on her face, and I saw the dawning realization in her eyes. I watched, mesmerized, as my daughter, in front of a packed church, called out her father and my stepsister, exposing them for the serial cheaters they were. When the video ended, there was a stunned silence in the room. Abby turned to me, her face raw with emotion. I looked at Bobby, and I realized how much it would destroy me if he ever did to me what Dad did to you. I finally understood what forsaking all others really meant. And I realized how much I had dishonored you, the most honorable woman I know, by letting that man take your place. I want to marry Bobby more than anything. but only if you will walk me down the aisle. Then she turned to a wide-eyed Leo and smiled a watery smile. And I need my little brother as a groomsman. Your tough love, it was the wake-up call I needed. Thank you. Leo just nodded, looking slightly overwhelmed but also incredibly proud. We talked for hours that night, deep into the early morning. Abby told me about the years of subtle manipulation, the endless stream of small lies Walter and Audrey had fed her and Daniel. He told us you didn't want to come to my high school graduation because you had an important work thing, she confessed, her voice thick with shame. He said you were building a new life and didn't have time for us anymore. It broke my heart to hear the specifics, but it also filled in so many painful gaps. It wasn't that my children didn't love me, it was that they had been systematically taught not to. That night, Abby ignored the flood of frantic calls from Walter and Audrey. But she picked up when her friends called, and I heard her laugh for the first time, a real, genuine laugh, as they told her how the wedding guests had thoroughly enjoyed the reception on Walter's dime. He had tried to cancel everything, but it was too late. The food was served, the bar was open, and the band played on. The next day, Daniel called. He'd seen the video Abby had sent him. His voice was thick with a shame and regret that sounded so much older than his years. Mom. I saw it. I can't believe I was so stupid. For so long. I'm so sorry. For everything. Can I come see you this weekend? For the first time in almost a decade, my family was coming back to me. It wasn't perfect, and it was messy, but it was real. The aftermath for Walter and Audrey was swift and brutal. The video Abby's friend posted went viral in our small town and the surrounding communities. Everyone knew. Their carefully constructed facade of a happy, perfect family was obliterated. Their reputation was ruined. A friend of mine who had been at the wedding and stayed for the reception called me a few weeks later. She told me she had been at a fancy local restaurant and had witnessed Walter and Audrey having a screaming match right in the middle of the dining room. Audrey was calling Walter a failed old man who couldn't even keep his own daughter on his side, and he was calling her a gold-digging tramp who ruined his life. They were a public spectacle, a cautionary tale. Their toxic alliance, built on my betrayal, couldn't survive the harsh light of public shame. They divorced within the year. Walter tried desperately to win back the kids' affection with lavish gifts and promises, but it was too late. They saw him for who he was, a weak, manipulative man. Audrey, whose entire identity was built on being desirable and admired, found herself a social pariah. She eventually moved away. A year later, I stood at the back of that same church. The air was filled with hope instead of tension. I held the arm of my daughter, who looked even more beautiful and radiant than the year before, because this time, her eyes shone with peace. I was no longer an outcast, a shameful secret to be hidden in the back. I was the proud mother of the bride. In the front row, my wonderful husband Mitch sat beside Leo, both of them beaming. And next to them sat my son, Daniel, who was once again Bobby's best man. The priest's familiar voice filled the air. Who gives this woman in marriage? I straightened my shoulders, my heart full. Her mother does, I said, my voice clear and firm. I leaned in, kissed Abby's cheek, and whispered, I love you, baby. I am so proud of you. Then, with steady hands, I placed her hand in Bobby's. At the reception, the joy was real and palpable. I sat at the head table, Mitch's hand holding mine, and watched my children laugh. My last official duty as mother of the bride was to share a dance with my daughter. We swayed to a slow song, and she rested her head on my shoulder. Thank you, Mom, she whispered. For never giving up on me, even when I gave up on you. Later, Daniel cut in. He held me close, just like he used to when he was a little boy. I'm so sorry, Mom, he whispered into my hair, his voice thick with emotion. For all the lost years. I promise I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'm so proud to be your son. The tears I held back in the church finally fell, but they were tears of pure joy. That night was the last time I saw Walter. He had shown up to the church, uninvited, and stood in the very back, a spectator at the life he had thrown away. He looked old, and small, and utterly alone. He left before the ceremony was even over. The years since then have been a gift. Abby and Bobby built a strong, happy marriage and gave me 3 beautiful grandchildren who call me Nana Jude. Daniel married a wonderful woman, and they have 2 sons. My home is no longer quiet, it's filled with the chaotic, beautiful noise of a large, loving family. My furniture restoration business is thriving, and my workshop is my happy place. Sometimes, new friends who hear my story ask if I regret not getting more revenge on Walter and Audrey, if I wish they had suffered more. The truth is, I didn't have to lift a finger. They destroyed themselves with their own lies and selfishness. Any action I took would have only kept me tied to their toxicity, dragged me down into the mud with them. Instead, I moved forward. I chose to build instead of break. I have a husband who loves and respects me, a son who came into my life like a gift, and 2 children who found their way back to me. My life is full. They say that living well is the best revenge. But I've learned something more profound than that. When you're truly living well, when your heart is full and your life has purpose, you stop thinking about revenge at all. You're just living. And that, my friends, is so much better. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you in any way, I'd be so grateful if you'd like the video and maybe share your own thoughts in the comments. It means the world to know we're not alone in these struggles. You take care now.